Please.
Commissioner Mum.
Here.
Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Roth. And Mayor Neely.
Here. Would you please all join me in the flag salute?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
With that, let's see, do we have any citizen comments? And I think the answer is probably yes, so I'll just go onto the floor here and start calling them out. Would Tom Guile and Dave Trudeau please come forward? Hi, Tom.
Hi, a cheerful good evening.
Hello.
I'm back and refreshed from sunny weather in Texas. My name's Tom Guile, Park Place neighborhood. I primarily came here this evening to make public an email I sent to all of you last week, and something I've been thinking about a lot lately. And I often read from my scripts because just like Romney and Newt Gingrich, you got to be really careful what you say. You got to choose the right words. So having been out of town during the last the city commission, I wasn't hearing everything, and I heard about it and watched it on TV when I got back. And I wanted to say that having been on the Park Place Neighborhood Association for over 8 years now as secretary and vice chair for 4 years, and even as chair, and as the neighborhood representative who's been the chair of the Citizens Involvement Council, the CIC, for 2 years, and I've still got another year to go. That's 3 years of there. I can tell you that as an eyewitness to what has been happening in Park Place during the past year, and as someone who has tried his best to negotiate and mediate between two camps, I think you, the City Commission, may have come upon the most logical solution to what has been taking place. And during my over 8 years on the Park Place neighborhood, what's transpired during the last year, since January of last year, never happened at all. Not before. It didn't happen until last January. In fact, there was very little interest in the Park Place Neighborhood Association, as Betty and I discussed several times when she was on CIC. We all got along, not always comfortably, but we worked together. There was so little interest during the past 4 years that not even many of our current officers even attended some of their own PP&A meetings. So this past year has all been about positioning to replace Nancy Walters on the URC, the Urban Renewal Commission. And it all stems from the citywide controversy over the rivers. No matter how you look at it, pro or con, it's just been about that, plain and simple. So if the seat was not an option in Park Place, all that you have seen and heard would not have taken place. All those who have come out of the woodwork in the past few months would probably crawl back to whence they came. But I understand that you have currently vacated the position and are considering your options right now. And I'm here to encourage you, despite the fact that I have interviewed for this position, to permanently vacate the Park Place neighborhood position and, in fact, restructure the Urban Renewal Commission to open the 2 neighborhood seats to the citywide selection process, or whichever case you decide to go. And while I feel that I've got the capability and independence of thought to successfully fill this position, I understand from your decision not to choose just from me. So if you vacate the position permanently reserved for Park Place, you will see calm return to the Park Place neighborhood. I can almost guarantee it, because there will be no golden egg, nothing of critical importance to compete for in controlling the Park Place Neighborhood Association. I had never thought about this as an option because it's always been a part of the bylaws of the URC, but I firmly believe that this is the best course of action that the city could take to eliminate the strife that exists there. And as CIC chair, and I sit up there and I talk to all the neighborhoods, you're right, I have not heard this kind of problems existing in any other neighborhood. So I think you could really go the distance to resolve what's going on in Park Place to change the whole course of action. Again, I wanted to thank you for allowing me to interview for that position a few weeks back. It was interesting, kind of enjoyable and exciting, but I'm willing to say it's time to move forward with something different.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Trudeau.
Dave Prideaux, Oregon City. I want to talk about our neighborhoods
I think we need to tell it like it is and straighten out some wrong impressions. Why are we getting bad publicity? I hold in my hand an Oregonian article from last week written by the South Metro representative. He wrote about citizen appointees. He claimed the latest proposal was sparked by political infighting. He went on to name Nancy Walters and 2 others with similar views in Park Place. He quoted Commissioner Rocky Smith as saying about what's going on, that neighborhood is a complete mess. However, this writer failed to explain what actually happened and why. Excuse me. In May of last year, a group of outsiders came in. They took over the Park Place Neighborhood Association meeting. They put up a slate of officers. They used their outsider votes to write in their candidates and dominate the meeting. And so they won a questionable election. Where is the sign-in sheet, the roster of who voted, including outsiders and Park Place residents? That sheet was said to have mysteriously disappeared. Those outsiders cast doubts upon the city's process. Are we able to conduct fair elections in our neighborhoods? Just a few weeks ago, in his December 13th memo, the city attorney suggested 2 ways to fix this problem. His first idea would work. It would plug the loophole. It would tighten up the requirements for who is allowed to vote in neighborhood affairs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Karen Murray.
Karen Morey, and I'm starting to realize I live outside the city, but I think I spend 1/3 of my time outside the city, the other 2/3 inside. I should qualify.
You'd have to move here, darling.
Yes, between work and volunteer obligations, I stay here. One of those volunteer hats is with the Clackamas County Historical Society. I am here tonight to bring your calendars up to date. The Museum of the Oregon Territory has been closed since the middle of December. We are not closed. We are in the process of reorganizing. We have a very exciting reorganization, almost complete, although today I was still tripping over a few things on the second floor. The museum on Saturday, February 11th, will be open from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Visitors will be able to enjoy our new exhibits. We have reorganized exhibits. We have increased the Native American exhibit area. We have added some chronology, and my pride and joy, we will be opening the first exhibit designed for the museum in several years, called A Man and His Camera, the Photography of Ralph Eddy. The museum holds the negatives of the entire body of work of a Oregon City photographer from 1909 to 1970. He went through every form of photographic media. We are looking at postcards that are well known from around Oregon, portraits, school photos. I got a preview today of one of the walls of photographs. It is utterly incredible. So again, on Saturday, February 11th, the museum is open, free, for people to tour the second floor museum and the Ralph Eddy exhibit. We are also, we're just having a party. We are having a crab fest at that evening. We are also having an art show. We are bringing back somewhat the heart of Oregon. We have used members of the Three Rivers Artists Guild as well as other local artists. We will have art, jewelry, photography, gifts available for you to purchase for your Valentine.
Nice.
That will be open from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Saturday, February 11th. And we are having a Crab Fest, which is a fundraiser for the Clackamas County Historical Society, who is back on their feet. We are alive, and we have things to show you.
Awesome.
Crab Fest tickets are available online at clackamashistory.org. $40 in advance, $50 at the door. $25 is a donation to the Clackamas County Historical Society and will help us to move our mission forward.
Thank you.
Great.
Could you
Thank
remind
you.
us again the time of the opening of the museum on the 11th?
The museum will open at 11 a.m. That will include the art show, the second floor exhibits, and the photography exhibit.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
The dinner starts at 5 with a social hour.
Very good. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Tom. 211 Tumwater Drive, overlooking the gorgeous Willamette Falls at the moment.
Very
Yes.
good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing nothing else there before us for citizens' comments, we've got to have one add-on, I believe, but to adopt the agenda. And do you want to go ahead and state what that add-on is?
The add-on is the second reading of the ordinance 12-1001. It was published as is required by city ordinance. There was a mistake in putting it on the agenda, and so we need to add it on this evening if the commission wishes.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to adopt the agenda with the inclusion of the add-on?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That would have been aye for me too, incidentally, so. All right. Starting with that, then we're going to move right into the public hearings. Resolution number 1202, annexation of .89 acres at 14362 South Maple Court. And I believe you're going to, Steve,
Yes, there's a misprint on the staff report cover there.
Yeah.
I will be presenting this.
Oh, okay.
We should be seeing this shortly.
I got the blue screen of death. I already had that on my home computer.
I was talking, I would just mention that Commissioner Roth is ill today, and that's the reason she's not here.
All right. We're doing everything we've done before.
Sometimes it goes that way.
My fear is this is what's going to happen at the state of the city center too.
Do you have a teleprompter?
Huh? Yeah, I don't have a teleprompter. I'm supposed to have. I'm going to have a show, but
Maybe you should announce when the date of the State of the City is.
that assumes that I remember it. But I do.
The State of the City is on.
The 17th. It's going to be at the Abernathy Center, and I'm not sure the time.
11:30.
11:30. Thank you.
And we will hear from our lovely mayor.
Who's she?
Our lovely, our handsome mayor. How's that? Debonair.
Debonair, yeah.
I will be there.
That's not the kind of air I've got, but anyway.
Here we go.
You're forever the optimist. Now you got a black screen and you're happy?
It's not blue. I keep hearing
Changes being made.
blue screen of death. There you go.
Thank you. Apologize for the delay, but a picture says 1,000 words, so.
Yes, it does.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. AN 1103 is the planning file for the annexation of .89 acres at 14362 South Maple Lane Road. It's approximately a quarter mile from the intersection of Oregon Highway 213 and Beaver Creek Road, the triangular-shaped parcel of land. and it is across the road from the Walnut Grove subdivision there. One tax lot. There is one house on the property with some outbuildings. There are no wetlands, water resources on the site. It is essentially a moderately sloping site. There's currently access by 2 residential driveways onto Maple Lane Court. Sewer, water, and storm sewer is available in Maple Lane Court and Maple Lane Road. Property has a comprehensive plan land use designation of low-density residential and a current Clackamas County zoning designation of FU10, which is Future Urban 10. And this property has been within the city's urban growth boundary since 1979, and no development is proposed at this time. The property, if it was developed in the future, could be divided to allow for 2 additional homes on the property. And the applicant has included in their annexation application a transportation analysis that complies with the Oregon Transportation Planning Rule for an R10 zoning scenario. Subsequently, city code allows for the automatic rezoning of properties that have been annexed into the city with a low-density residential designation to receive an R10 zoning designation. And this property has been analyzed in the city's adopted transportation system plan when that was adopted in 2004. Subsequently, staff supports the automatic rezoning to R10. The potential traffic generation from development of this property has already been accounted for in our system development charges that we charge at the time of a building permit. But as I said, no development is proposed at this time. But they have included a transportation planning rule analysis for that scenario. This contour site plan for the property showing the approximate location of the houses on the property and where it sits in relation to the intersection. And this is a schematic of the surrounding zoning on the site, surrounded on 2 sides by R10 and on the north side of Maple Lane Road by county zoning. This is a utility scenario showing approximate location of water, sewer, and storm sewer facilities on the site. The Planning Commission has reviewed the proposal, and there are several factors that the Commission must take into account when reviewing an annexation. First is adequacy of access to the site. Second is conformity of the proposal with the city's comprehensive plan. Third is adequacy and availability of public facilities and services to service potential development. And fourth is compliance with the Oregon Revised Statutes, Chapter 222, and Metro's Code 309. Fifth is whether there are any natural hazards identified by the city, such as wetlands, floodplains, and steep slopes. Sixth is any significant adverse effects on specially designated open space, scenic, historic, or natural resource areas by urbanization of the subject property at the time of annexation. And seventh is the lack of significant adverse effects on the city's economic, social, and physical environment by the impact of the annexation. And according to our charter and code, City Commission shall only set for an annexation election those proposals that are consistent with a positive balance of these factors. Planning Commission has reviewed the staff report, have reviewed the applicant's proposal in detail, and found the annexation to be consistent with all 7 of these factors, and voted 4-0-1 to forward the annexation to you for your review. Staff's recommending that the annexation be moved forward to the voters of Oregon City for a May 15th annexation election. Included in the exhibits is the ballot title with a map that would be part of the ballot, and an explanatory statement that would go with the ballot title. I should note that the Secretary of State's office has already reviewed that ballot title and found it to be impartial so that we don't have any problems with how the wording of that. It can still be challenged by somebody who feels that the ballot title is not impartial, and there's a timeline and there's time for that to be done. That is my presentation. If you have any specific questions about the annexation application, I'd be happy to answer those.
Could you go back to the first map, the one that you
Yeah,
outlined?
certainly.
There-
Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
This one?
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the map that would accompany the ballot title. It's kind of a stripped-down, bare-bones kind of thing. Shows the proposed annexation area, the city's boundaries, and the urban growth boundary is the dotted line.
Now, was
the
this, I'm not sure what the answer is, because I know there were properties, when we went with the Beaver Creek comprehensive plan, was this property covered in that comprehensive plan, or had that plan already been identified as being within our urban
No.
growth expansion?
This property, I do not believe, was included as part of that, because I should have mentioned that having been in the UGB since 1979, it wasn't subject to the requirement for
Right.
Title 11 planning, and so it wasn't included in that plan.
I just wanted to check on what the boundaries were. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think before we continue on, our attorney is going to ask questions of us.
Yeah, I have to give you the cautions, you and the audience, and ask you the questions that accompany a quasi-judicial proceeding. It's not clear whether annexations are subject to all the rules I'm going to tell you, but for safety's sake, I'm going to assume that they are. This is a quasi-judicial proceeding, and I'm obliged under ORS 197-763 to indicate that there are certain criteria that are applicable to this proceeding. You've seen them on the projector, and they are contained in the staff report. I don't think I need to read them, given all that. The participants in this hearing are requested to address those criteria or any other criteria that they believe apply to this case, and that failure to raise an issue with sufficient specificity to allow other parties or you as the decision makers to address that issue would preclude an appeal to the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals and subsequently the courts. I'm also obliged, I don't think there are any conditions here, but if there were conditions, the applicant must object to any conditions if they believe they're invalid or unconstitutional, and failure to do so would preclude a challenge in circuit court or in LUBA. Let me ask if any of the current members of the commission have any ex parte contacts about this matter.
No.
No.
All of you indicated no. Do you have any monetary gain that would come out of this?
No.
That I know of,
Okay.
anyway.
Then we're prepared to proceed.
Should mention that included within your exhibits are the recommended findings, reasons for decision, and recommendations for the annexation. They talk about how the property would be taken out of certain service districts and added to the city's service area.
Right. Thank you.
And I believe the applicant probably has a few words.
Evening, Mayor and Commission members. My name is Tom Sissel, address 375 Portland Avenue, Gladstone. And I'm hopefully going to keep this to a few words here. Mr. Bowles is not with us tonight. He's got continuing back problems and unable to attend. But he does live on the site and has owned this property for a number of years. I'm just going to simply point out a few things that some of which Pete already mentioned. The site is less than an acre, and it's the only parcel within the block bounded by Maple Lane Court, Maple Lane Road, and Beaver Creek that is excluded from the city at this time. And if annexed, this would make a more logical boundary and a shorter boundary between the county and city's common line. So I believe those are all good reasons that this should be brought into within the city. And so, unless you have questions, I'm simply going to ask that the City Commission vote to approve resolution number 12-02 and forward this to the city voters. And as a note, I did check the date noted for the election to confirm that is truly the election day. I didn't want to have an error there. So unless you have any questions, that's all I have this evening.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That we've opened the public hearing yet?
Actually, his was the first testimony of the public hearing.
Well, I've opened the public hearing to the general public, I guess. I have Christine Kaczynski and Tim, is it Cecil?
Nope, that was just him.
That was him.
Sorry, Tim. Yes. Yeah. This is the first one, too.
That's the first Wednesday.
Christine Kaczynski, an Incorporated Clackamas County. I'm neither pro nor con on this annexation, but I'm here to bring up a concern. This property is at the intersection of Maple Lane Court and Maple Lane Road. First of all, I wondered if the Caulfield neighborhood had been notified. Aren't they within distance?
I believe he spoke to it. I believe he actually made a presentation to the neighborhood association, but he has to speak for himself on that.
Okay, and I don't know if they had any comments. I just wondered if
Yes, they have been.
the process had
Yes.
been open to them.
Yes.
Although the applicant is only requesting annexation at this time, certainly when future development is proposed, heavy traffic on Maple Lane Road must be strongly considered since it is becoming a serious safety issue for this neighborhood. I strongly believe your voters should be aware of these traffic issues prior to making a decision to vote yes or no on this annexation. For your information and for the record, the current traffic counts for Maple Lane, which were performed in October of 2011, are as follows. Maple Lane Road, 200 feet west of Holly Lane. The traffic count is already 7,020 per day. On Maple Lane, 250 feet east of Holly Lane, the traffic count is 5,902 per day. On Maple Lane Road, 50 feet north of Beaver Creek Road, the traffic count is 4,865 cars per day.
Where are you quoting that from?
From Clackamas County Engineers.
Okay.
These counts are significant when considering that most of Maple Lane is a small and windy country road, which I believe was originally used only as a connector road. This part of Maple Lane Road, where the annexation is being proposed, is heavily traveled not only by motorists and school buses, but Maple Lane is also used by many citizens and children walking to Albertsons Shopping Center. Please keep in mind that continued development in the Maple Lane area will only exacerbate an already difficult and unsafe traffic situation. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have no other requests from the general public. The applicant wish to comment on anything? If you want to.
For the record, again, this is Tom Sissel. First, we did did meet with the Caulfield Neighborhood Association. I can't remember exactly the date right now, but Mayor Neely, you were there that evening. So, and there was no significant questions or concerns when we presented in front of the Caulfield neighborhood. And in regards to the traffic issues, there was a traffic study prepared for this annexation request, as was requested by the city. And as Mr. Walters noted, that the parcel, if approved by the voters, we brought in as R10, which would allow, in theory, 2 additional dwellings on this lot. Actually, there's some doubt on our mind if actually, with the odd configuration of the parcel and considering right-of-way dedications that are likely to be required, if would actually be 2 able to be configured and meet city zoning requirements. So the impact of this annexation will be small. If sometime in the future there would be some sort of request for some other type of zoning or higher density residential, that request would have to come in front of this body. It would involve additional traffic studies, and the evaluation would be made at that time. The applicant just wishes to annex his property and has prepared a traffic study in that accordance. So that's all I have to say.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Close the public hearing,
It's up to you.
and it's up to us.
I have a question
Sure.
for the police chief. And we see in this annexation what we've seen in many previous ones, which is a concern about police service. Not so much an issue, I think, in completely in this scenario because it is so small. But I want you to explain a little bit more the $3,500 figure that applies to each building, and what that money or what that actually pays for, well, essentially, what does that cover, and does it really balance out the service that are needed for a particular lot?
Sure, and I think Tony can kind of help me with some of the historical perspective of this, but this happened under the previous
Right.
police chief's administration, in which he was, pretty adamant, and rightfully so, that new development put a bigger strain on the police department, and specifically bigger developments. A development or an annexation of 2 or 3 houses, such as this one, doesn't put a strain on the police department, but the accumulative effect of several annexations or larger annexations does stress police services. So the $3,500 was something at the time that developers agreed voluntarily to contribute to help offset the cost of those police services.
What you see typically is that when you get a house built, there's a delay between when those taxes come in to when those services are needed to serve that house. And this was the number that was derived that helped cover that initial.
And I'm aware of that, but how was it? How did that number come about, and does it actually cover the services that we're talking about?
I really don't know how that $3,500 figure came about.
Right.
Maybe Tony might be able to.
It's something we could bring back. I'd have to go back and check. That was a negotiation with Chief Harris as to how that number was derived.
Right, and I know that I asked that question at the time. I never got a satisfactory answer to it at that time. That's why I bring it up again. I mean, I think the reason it's important to me is, especially when we get into large annexations, that number stays the same. And if we don't know how we came up with that number, how do we know that it's paying for those services that we're dealing with? And obviously this was something that was done with the former police chief, so I'm not, if our police chief is unaware of how that number came, I think that concerns me, because I don't know how you're able to say that counteracts it. I know in this case maybe not so much, but if we have a larger annexation, which we will be talking about another larger one this evening, or even larger ones in the future, because I know this has been a number that we've used for years, but I want to know that that's actually paying for that. That's actually taking care of the problem, and I don't know if I don't know that I can say that.
I would have to go back and do a little bit of research and maybe even contact Chief Harris and find out exactly how that number was arrived at and how that was calculated.
Is this something that's unique to Oregon City? I mean, I can't imagine we just. There's got to be other.
To the best of my knowledge, yes, it is unique to Oregon City.
All right.
And again, it is voluntary on the part of the developers. They're not required to pay that $3,500.
Any other questions? Do you want to take action on this?
Absolutely. The beauty of our charter, it says our citizens get to decide if they want this in or not. So everybody gets to vote on this. So I feel very comfortable with our citizens deciding for themselves. So I would move to adopt resolution number 12-02 NA 11-03, annexation of 0.89 acres at 14362 South Maple Lane Court.
Second?
I'm not going to second it.
I'll second. Okay. More discussion?
The only thing I mean, that is my concern. And in interest of being consistent with future annexations, I don't think this is such an issue with this one because it is one house, two houses. But I think that we need to know the rationalization of that number, and I've never been completely convinced of where that number came from or why it's there, especially if there's no comparison to any other community that does this. I know some background of how it came about, and it's a little different than what I'm being told tonight, so that's why I asked about it. And I want to be fully comfortable with it. I think obviously, the citizens do have a choice to vote on this, but I think we need to clear that question up a little bit more for me to be comfortable.
With that, want to go ahead with the roll call, please.
Commissioner Smith?
No.
Commissioner Mum?
Yes.
Mayor Neely?
Yes. With that, the motion carries 2-1. Is the add-on on our screen?
That would be item number 7D.
Okay.
Yeah.
You referred to another annexation coming before us. Were you referring to the ballot title that was taken to the May 15th election?
Right.
Okay. That's what I wanted to make sure that I understand.
Yeah, I wasn't.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So now we're at a declaration of restrictive covenants affecting real property and assumption agreement. Agreements entered into with historic properties of Oregon City. Staff report? We're going to be from Mrs. Crushhour.
Thank you. Do you need copies of the attachments? Nancy Ide has them if you need them.
I don't. It's the same.
Yeah.
Why don't we just give them to
Okay.
Nancy? Could you please give them the attachments?
These are these. Have we seen these attachments earlier today? I'll just put that question forward.
Yes, you did.
Thank
They're
you.
the ones you saw earlier today.
Thanks.
So, before you tonight is a declaration of restrictive covenants, which is would be applicable to the property currently located at 1743 Washington Street. It's owned by the City of Oregon City, and there also in front of you is consideration of an assumption agreement for the City Commission to assume an option agreement that was previously held between the city's Urban Renewal Commission and Historic Properties. We found out that property was not an urban renewal property. It's a City of Oregon City property, and therefore urban renewal shouldn't have been a party to that agreement. And since then, we've been working with the City Commission to transfer that agreement to the City Commission. And in so doing, the City Commission wished to have some requirements placed on the property at 1743 Washington Street that would create connectivity between 17th Street and the Amtrak property. And primarily those, the connectivity is desirable for pedestrians and bicycles and vehicles to be able to cross over all of those properties in there, which at this time happen to be all owned by historic properties. The exception is on the corner of 17th and Washington Street. The reasons for that connectivity is, A, when you have assembled parcels like that, it's great for circulation to be able to cross property lines and not to have a property line be a barrier to pedestrian connections and bike and vehicle connections. We also thought that perhaps one day there would be a need to have public easements across those properties if for some reason someday we could get some sort of a crossing again of the railroad, perhaps at 17th Street, even if it would be for pedestrians and bicycles only. And the other thought of having good circulation and connectivity between all of these properties is that it would make it much more attractive to the development of those properties should the city require some limitations on driveways in terms of access off of Washington Street. And such limitations on access would enable us to maintain a much higher capacity of Washington Street by having fewer driveways and things that get in the way. The agreement, so tonight I'm asking the City Commission to approve the declaration of restrictive covenants, which addresses all of those crossover public easements. And I'm also asking that in order to execute the declaration of restrictive covenants, that the City Commission approve the assumption agreement, and then that they authorize the city manager to execute those two agreements as well as closing documents for when Historic Properties acquires the city's property at 1743 Washington Street. Are there any questions? I tried to condense a lot of information.
You did.
I think it's okay for me to comment. This was before us in executive session before, so we're quite familiar with these documents. We went through them. So, were there any other additional questions that you've come up with since we've had this discussion?
I don't have any additional comments.
At this point, do we have comments from the floor? For this, okay.
Just one just now.
Yes, I saw Tom O'Brien come forward.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. Tom O'Brien, Oregon City. I guess I feel a little uneasy about the process. I recognize that when you're dealing in such matters, they have to be handled at an executive session. The last time that anything came to a public session on this issue was a month ago at your January 4th meeting. What I am uncomfortable with is that following that meeting, a number of people who had come to that meeting here went to McMenamin's to have dinner. And the applicant who has been under consideration on this property exchange was there with his wife, and at his table was a city commissioner and the city attorney. And it was described to me that they were having a celebrative gathering, seemed quite happy about whatever was going on. That I'm uncomfortable with. I think that when someone comes forward and uses a threat of a lawsuit against our city, and subsequently a lot of things go on in executive session, I just don't feel comfortable with city commissioners, city attorneys, socializing while that negotiating is going on. Thank you.
Part of that, city attorney, I guess, stepped out.
He's watching outside.
I'm rather certain that Especially with the city attorney there, nothing inappropriate would have been said.
I can guarantee that.
Yeah.
I just don't think it looks
I-
appropriate to
you know,
the citizens of our city.
I wished I was the commissioner there, and I wished whoever was standing or sitting there would have come up and joined with us, because there was nothing that was said that couldn't have been said in this room in front of everybody. And I cannot believe that somebody would be up here with no proof at all of what was said and making these statements. I mean, this is where damage begins. Rumors hurt. Words hurt.
I don't think, in fairness to Mr. O'Brien, I don't think he was questioning whether we talked about it. He was feeling that the image it created was an issue, and I'm sure he's not making an accusation anything was said. At least that's what I heard from the comments.
I intentionally did not name Commissioner.
I'm always open for the public to come up and talk to me no matter where I am. I don't talk about things outside of the chamber that I cannot talk about in my home.
I don't know if anybody else wants to comment to that.
I do.
Go ahead.
I agree fully. I've had concerns with this the entire time, and this has been an issue that we've obviously been talking about in executive session. I feel a lot better about it at this point than I did, but I still can't give it my blessing. I think, and I've said this before, image is everything. And this doesn't look right. It's never looked right. There was big mistakes made in the city, and there continues to be to some degree. I feel good. I feel fine about it. The problem is we have, as a commission tonight, have to decide between two really bad choices, and have to decide which one's worse. But there's three of us up here. So, and if there is a motion, there's...
it's difficult to say because I know Commissioner Smith and I have, and I won't be specific here, but we've sat down at tables together in which certain actions were being taken by citizens of the city, and they had things on their shirt, and I don't think anybody would have at least accused you of being involved in that particular group.
Well, we don't tolerate it.
And so I think maybe the attorney wants to say something as well.
I just want to say that nothing was said. I set the ground rules at the very beginning that nothing could be said about it.
Right.
And it is, I will comment, it is kind of easy to drift to discussions sometimes when you're sitting with other people, things that we're talking about. And I know whenever the attorney is there, he'll cover his ears, and we immediately know we're not going into areas we should not go. But I think, frankly, every member of this commission is very, very sensitive to that, and I do understand your concern about appearance. I think that is something we always need to bear in mind. And thank you for bringing it up.
It's easy not to catch yourself in that situation.
Yeah, you're quite right. With that, do I hear any motions coming before us?
I move to approve, and Nancy, can you tell me what it's supposed to?
Yes. Move to approve the declaration of restrictive covenants affecting real property agreement between Historic Properties LLC and the City of Oregon City, and authorize the city manager to execute the agreement as well as execute the assumption agreement and closing documents for the sale of the city-owned property at 1743 Washington Street to Historic Properties LLC for $175,000.
Thank you.
Second.
Discussion. I just would make a comment because so much of this is covered in the executive session. I think one of the big issues before us was the issue of public easements, and I think that got pretty well resolved in the process. So, with that, the vote, please.
Commissioner Smith?
No.
Commissioner Mum?
Yes.
Mayor Neely?
Yes. The motion passes 2-1. Next on our agenda is, every time I go from one place to another, it always goes to the top here. So next thing that we have on our agenda is Resolution 1203, setting election date of May 15th, planning file AN, annexation 6.5 acres to Oregon City. Before we'll go through the usual procedures here, it's not part of a public hearing, I think, because we've been through this process before.
There's no hearing, really. It's just, you can take comment if
Right.
you wish.
And we
The comments
probably
would be-
will. This was before us and got approved, I believe, with a 4-1 vote at the time. However, we found that it's very easy to get something into the ballot title, which the Attorney General might have difficulties with. So we
Secretary of State.
Secretary of State, I'm sorry. Secretary of State has problem with. So we're essentially vetting every ballot title we have with the Secretary of State's process. And in the process of the vetting that occurred, there were some concerns that they had. So we, rather than force the thing through at that particular time for probably was a November election, we came to the conclusion we would put the ballot title off until in fact, the issues that the Secretary of State office had were resolved, and I believe this has been dealt with. Correct. It doesn't mean that somebody can't still complain about it. No. Okay, with that, I don't know what all we have to hear on this, but we probably do have a staff that's responsible for taking the comments, and Tony Conkle is the presenter. Do you have anything?
You stole all my thunder, so unless you have questions, that's a recommendation.
I just want to let the public know I knew something, that's all.
We're just bringing back this resolution for the ballot title and description for the 6.5 acres for the May 15th, 2012 election.
Yeah. I've got a query that I'm going to bring to the attorney at a later moment, but it's related to this in a sense. Go ahead. Are we ready to go?
That's all I have.
Does someone want to put a motion to put this forward for the ballot title for the May 15th election?
There's one speaker.
Oh, I do have a comment. I'm sorry. Come forward, Christine Kaczynski.
I didn't know if I could make comments tonight. Christine Kaczynski, unincorporated Clackamas County. Have you ever had a dream that didn't come true? Years ago, I came along with you to help develop the Park Place plan, a development set in a beautiful canyon with parks, trails, and an education center. With time, this dream has turned into a nightmare. Recent proposals to build the River Shopping Center has doomed the full build-out of the Park Place plan because two of the core values have been broken. The first core value is transportation. I offer the following traffic counts. Redland Road, east of Holly, 7,525 trips a day. Redland Road, west of Holly, 9288 trips per day. Compare these counts with the following 4-lane roads. Beaver Creek at Molalla, 96 trips per day. Sunnyside Road at 122nd, 14,000 trips per day. This comparison indicates that Redland Road, a small 2-lane country arterial, currently carries almost the same loads as a large 4-lane arterial. Now add the Park Place plan at full build-out, 20,000 trips per day. Beaver Creek plan, 55,000 trips per day. Shopping center, approximately 40,000 trips a day. What are you thinking? You can't possibly ask Redland Road to carry this traffic. More roads, you say. With what money? Even you have none. You will be forced to float a bond measure. Your citizens need to know this before voting. Why you have failed to demand traffic impact studies is simply inexcusable. and frankly, I feel not legal, since development is going to lower the current road standards. The second core value is to protect the fragile environment. How do you propose to protect the forest, small animals, creeks, salmon? The animals and fish will need gas masks just to survive. The amount of traffic you are proposing will decimate Newell Canyon. I wish I could see Oregon City be better stewards of their land. All I've seen so far is the raping of land on Glen Oak, the building of thousands of subpar apartments which will be blighted within 10 years. You are on the path of being a bedroom community which will never bring success to this city. Where are the jobs? We need no more homes. I cannot support this development. Even the tiniest annexation into Park Place will open the floodgates of enormous traffic onto Redland, Holly, and other small country roads. At a time when the city has failed to produce a common sense transportation plan for this area, which includes traffic safety standards. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, this was time for This was time for comment on the resolution. The hearing's been closed, and you should, to the extent of any new facts, you should disregard.
I think a couple of points I want to make on the particular annexation, and you correct me if I'm wrong. The public access is actually on Holcomb. I believe there's access being provided to Livesey for emergency vehicles, and one of the big issues we had was that during flood events, people that lived on Livesey had no way to get through, and we had, I think, a medical emergency, which this is years past, and I think the intent to make the connection to Livesey, I'm not sure even it's a public road. It's for private entities that have properties there to be able to get out in case we have emergency situations on Redland like we've had, and that's my recollection, and you may correct that if you wish.
And the site would take access from Holcomb Road.
Yeah.
Any concerning alternative access at this point, it was a proposal to bring in land, not an actual development proposal. There would be an option for some type of a private easement from Livesey to that property through the county, but those are things that would need to be discussed if this property is brought in for development at some future date.
So what I'm trying to say is this particular annexation would not have direct impact on Redland Road.
That's correct.
Thank you. Okay. With that, do I hear a motion?
Move to approve resolution number 12-03, setting an election date of May 15th, 2012.
Second.
Vote, please.
Commissioner Smith?
Discussion, actually, first.
Okay, fine.
I just wanted to make a comment really quick. This obviously, it was already approved. So I don't have, I'm not going to stop it from going forward, but definitely want clarification on the police issue in the future, and also I trust, it's in the hand of the voters.
Yes, that's the beauty of it.
Second, or aye.
Aye. And Commissioner Mum?
Aye.
And Mayor Neely?
Aye. With that, the resolution passes, and now we're coming to recommendations to approve an architect contract with the Ermatinger House staff and Scott Archer, and we're really excited to start moving on this a bit.
Thank you, Mayor Neely, and Commissioners, good evening. Yes, the recommendation is for the approval of the contract that is before you. It is with Architectural Resources Group, which is an architectural and engineering services consultant. We have, as you know, we've been working on the preservation and the restoration of the Ermatinger House. One of the major steps in doing that is for us to hire an architect and engineering firm to provide us with our final design and rehabilitation plans. And so this is the contract that would do so. Just a little bit of background, we did a request for proposals advertisement and went through a competitive selection process. We received 9 excellent proposals. We had very good qualified firms respond to our request. So there was obviously a lot of interest in this. And we had a committee that convened that was made up of staff and citizen representatives that helped us in selecting the top proposer, which was unanimously ARG. And with that, we would recommend your approval, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions?
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
What made? I'm glad to hear it was unanimous. What made this company stand out beyond the others, and what was the?
I think a number of things, and I'll just say right now, I was not on the selection committee, but
Okay.
two staff persons were Christina Robertson Gardner and Denise Kai, who are both
Okay.
very involved with the project, as well as some, like I said, some very knowledgeable citizen folks. But from the information I have, it based on their experience, past projects, qualifications, working closely with some of the important organizations that we work with on this project, such as SHPO. They're currently working with National Park Service at Fort Vancouver on a restoration project, and there's some good tie-ins there. And obviously, and one of the key things is that we're designing this to the standards of the Department of Interior, which is basically the federal standard for historical restoration. And this firm had a lot of knowledge of working with those standards and so forth. Just overall experience and qualifications. They came highly recommended from other organizations as well.
Okay, and I'm glad to hear that, because one of my questions was NPS. Basically, the hope is obviously, and we've all talked about the need to keep them in the loop. I don't know if they have been in the loop as this has continued on.
One of their staff people were on our RFP selection committee.
Okay,
yeah.
so
Yeah,
that's
very
great.
much so.
And so I actually looked up this company when I saw this. And,
That's good.
They definitely look to be knowledgeable in the area of restoration and historic preservation, etc. So I'm pretty happy about that. I do have one of the questions that came into mind today regarding national parks, I'm glad they're in the loop on it for sure, was especially when it comes to issues like ADA access, which the McLaughlin House and the Barclay House have been through numerous restoration processes over the last decades or more, and have never addressed that. So I don't know how. I guess I'm curious as to, when we redid the Carnegie Center, there was definitely the elevator access and issues and the ramps and all that stuff. And I'm just curious as to why it's a little harder to deal with it in a house situation because of the visual impact of it. And also because of the size of the houses, the McLaughlin House being slightly larger than the Ermitinger House, obviously. But when you get into ramps and elevators, and you're really having a harder time with the character of the houses. So I'm wondering, I actually was kind of curious from the National Park standpoint, since that was really never addressed with the McLaughlin House or the Barclay House, how is that issue dealt with in the situation of a house? And do you know?
I have some information. That's a really good question and some really good points about that. I need to clarify. I'm not a building official, and I'd have to defer to some of that expertise. My understanding, though, is with historical facilities and historical structures where you're trying to preserve that historical integrity, there are some exemptions to the ADA laws. You have some flexibility. We will follow whatever the prescribed rules are for that, while still trying to maintain the character of the house. And I assume that's why the Park Service was able to do what they were able to do with the McLaughlin and Barclay houses, as you're asking, and my understanding is it will be a similar type of that would be a similar type of thing with the Ermitanger.
I guess the bonus with the Ermitanger house is we have a section of the building which is not historically part of the original house,
True.
which, you know, in the restoration process has to be determined, well, do we keep that or do we not? And I assume we keep it because any future use of that house is going to require certain needs, like a kitchen, etc. So it's a lot easier to deal with a bathroom and a ramp if it's attached possibly to the non-original structure of the house. So I guess there's a plus in that scenario. I've marked this paper all up, so I just want to make sure I see all the questions. Yeah, this has been a long time coming, and I'm excited about it. And I guess what I will say before we approve this is that you can't give me enough information about this topic. So, you know, I know a lot of these meetings take place during the day, but any meetings that don't, I want to be there. And any input that goes through. I guess one of my the reason I'm extremely passionate about this house, as you all know, is you know, I've had a connection with the house for the past 15 years, so and a direct connection to the volunteer staff that's there or has been there. So I have I definitely feel like I want to give input into questions that I think are going to be dealt with in this process, which is, you know, there's specific references in here to what the future use of the building is going to be, and all those kind of things. You know, there's no way that I'll be able to attend all these meetings, but I want to be in the loop enough to be able to know when the meetings are happening, or at least make comments about what's going on, because I want to make sure that it's done right. And it's going great right now. I'm just so excited about it, but it's that important, and I just feel that I have a huge connection to it, probably more so than even some staff, but you guys are definitely, you know, focused on this. So you've gained a huge amount of trust, and I'm just really thrilled with where we're at right now. So
I want to make a comment. When we're looking at ADA access to the Carnegie Center, and of course Carnegie Center has its the Carnegie Building, I should say, had its own historic story, and ADA access came in. We did ask, it was Jerry Ryan, who's a paraplegic, to come in and give us advice on that particular aspect. And the design was actually changed. I think originally they were talking about having a ramp to the backside, and then they ultimately took the ramp to the basement, and then they could had the elevator service on the inside. I think to bring somebody that's sensitive to the historic importance, which he was. But that also is a person who could use the ADA service to perhaps come into the discussion at one point as a decision was made when the Carnegie was being looked at, what might be some benefit.
Okay, we'll take a look at that. I know, again, if it reassures you, commissioners, that you know our architect is very, very highly qualified to do this, and I have you know, utmost confidence in them to guide us in some of those kinds of concerns and issues, and give us recommendations, and then work through those issues. But yeah, we'll take all those suggestions and recommendations to heart, and we'll be providing updates and let you know what's going on. And then and I think the other thing to reassure the commission is and we'll offer, you know, those opportunities to have feedback or input, but ultimately the commission will approve some construction plan at some
Right.
point. So
Right.
you'll have that final
Right.
say of going forward or not
Right.
when we
Right.
get to the point of putting it up to bid. So that's kind of your ultimate, if you have a concern there,
Any other questions?
No.
With that, do I have a motion?
Good job, Rocky.
Do I have a motion?
Don't
Oh.
say, yes. Let
Yes.
me,
You got it?
motion to approve the contract for Architectural Resources Group for architectural and engineering services for the Ermitinger House rehabilitation. The contract is not to exceed $65,000.
Second.
Any more discussion? Hearing none, the vote, please.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Mum?
Aye.
Mayor Neely?
Aye, thank you. We're going on to the consent agenda. I'm not asking that anything be
Wait,
pulled.
wait, wait.
Excuse me, Mayor.
Oh, excuse me, am I off again? Did I miss something?
We missed the one that had
The water master
D.
plan.
Oh, that, yes. Yeah, the one that we got to add, excuse me. Short memory here. We have the second reading of the Water Master Plan before us, I believe, and open it to Nancy Crushhour. I had requested something, and I think it's been dealt with, but
Yes.
I'll take the first whack. This is this proposed second reading of ordinance 12-1001, an update of the Oregon City Water Distribution System Master Plan. You approved the first reading on January 18th, 2012. And I guess at that point I'll turn it over to Nancy to address the question that was raised.
Yeah, that'd be great. Maybe I'll just move it there. From what I understand, Mayor Neely was interested in,
no, scenario one, I guess.
right, well, Mayor Neely was interested in reviewing the scenario for water rates if the, there we go.
There we go.
For if we did not roll back our rates and we maintained a 3% annual rate increase, and that was, we had looked at 4 scenarios in developing the master plan, and then one of them, which is this one, and it's scenario 1. And what it does show is that operating expenses do remain below the total water fund revenue. However, you do not get the magnitude of recommended pipe replacement improvements that you would with looking at temporary, larger annual rate increases for 1 or 2 years, or looking at even a greater maximum annual rate increase. So I believe you wanted to review this slide,
Yeah.
Mayor Neely.
Let me say why this came up. First of all, us acting on this has nothing to do with any kind of decision of these scenarios that are put forward. This particular one was the one I asked for, and this would require a change of this would require a vote of the people. We based upon a citizen-driven annexation, we have this rollback and then a 3% cap. 2A and 2B may not have, but this one definitely would. The reason I brought this forward was at our retreat, we were discussing this, and our city manager suggested that we just should remove that piece altogether from the charter. It asked the voters to remove it, from the charter. And I stated that first of all, I didn't think that would work. I think the citizens, when they put forward this particular measure, may not have understood all the ramifications that we are understanding now, but they would not accept a a control substituted for what we have. And this is one of the reasons I wanted this to come forward in our discussion, because this was actually discussed at our retreat. And this was actually listed as our biggest priority. There were other things, the possibility of a parks maintenance fee put on a utility bill, for example, and a few other things. But we felt this one went to our top priority of beginning to look at this particular issue. And I did want this brought up so that I could get this out for one thing, but to state that I do think we would not be successful in a vote if we simply remove the wording that's there without some kind of argument as to why we're doing it, and a guarantee, as far as the public was concerned, that they would continue to have a voice through the election box as if anything changed, but if we could get this forward and passed. And I just don't think it would pass if you just said we're going to pull it and not put anything in its place. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to see this up there. And so thank you for getting this for us here. And with that, I guess we simply ask for the, if someone wants to put a motion in for the second
You
reading.
have to read the second.
And he needs to read it, but we need a motion for the second reading. No?
Let's go ahead.
Yeah.
Move to approve, or move for second reading of ordinance number 12-1001.
Second?
And approval.
And approve.
And approval.
Second.
Whoop. No, here, reading please. I almost blew it.
This is ordinance 12-1001, an ordinance adopting an update to the Oregon City Water Distribution System Master Plan and ancillary document to the Oregon City Comprehensive Plan.
Now the vote, please.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Mum?
Aye.
Mayor Neely?
Aye. Vote carries. Thank you. And with that, I think we're ready to go to the consent agenda. I wanted to make a point on the consent agenda. I think all three of us would have seen the non-remonstrance agreements that we have. Because of the lack of development, we haven't had many of these coming before us.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that, I'm just not sure whether, had you seen this before, Commissioner Mum? I'm not sure that, and I think I'll leave it in the consent agenda, but I think for Commissioner Mum's benefit and also for Commissioner Roth's benefit, we might want to devote, next time we have a remonstrance agreement coming before us, that you might want to come to us and talk to us about what that is.
Yeah.
And we, I know Commissioner Smith has been here long enough that he's handled this, but we've had so few developments coming through, we just haven't seen these
It was certainly Commissioner Roth's first exposure to it, and she asked us for additional information, which Ms. Kreshower got out this morning.
Yeah.
I think I'd have to congratulate you on one paragraph explanation of this, because I've seen I've seen council spend a week trying to figure out what it is.
Yeah.
And so she went ahead. I think Nancy went ahead and forwarded that to all of you,
Yes.
Oh, okay.
including,
I didn't
including
check
Commissioner
that.
Roth, who was satisfied with the
Yeah.
explanation.
I saw that.
Do you have the paragraph before us? Because maybe the listeners, the people here in the audience might want to hear
Okay.
why we have this on, for example, a consent agenda, and what the benefit of this is to the city.
Okay, so in this particular situation, there was a land use decision for a minor partition, and as part of the approval of that land use, a conditional approval was placed on it that stated, prior to final plat, the applicant shall sign a non-remonstrance agreement for the purpose of making sanitary sewer, storm sewer, water, or street improvements in the future that benefit the property, and assessing the cost to benefited properties pursuant to the city's capital improvement regulations in effect at such time of such improvement. Now, granted, if you don't have that in front of you, that sounds like garbledy-goop, I think. So, so what it means is that the person that develops this property or partitions it signs an agreement that states that he cannot, or he or she cannot oppose, which means remonstrate against. They cannot oppose any future local improvement districts, which are districts that are formed to share the costs of constructing street improvements, storm improvements, sanitary or water improvements, utility or street improvements. And typically when you form a local improvement district, the project benefits a certain block, a certain group of property owners. And in order to share those costs amongst those property owners, the City Commission has to pass a local improvement district. And what this does is it guarantees that that person will not oppose that local improvement district, which is good benefit because normally these are good projects that it benefits those particular property owners and completes discontinuities in our infrastructure system usually.
Let me, because I was here when we actually, I don't know if it was an ordinance or what it was that put this forward. Local improvement districts, really, the property owners have to agree to it. It's not something that the City Commission simply does. Essentially, it has to have the backing of the people there. And the big concern is you have a parcel coming in and you have new owners and they do not perceive the lack of the facilities that the rest of the neighbors that are already there do, and would have the capability then of blocking it when in fact it is something that was in fact needed, and maybe that particular development wouldn't benefit from that much simply because it's a new development. And that's one of the reasons I believe this came forward. And when we heard, actually, I don't think we ever heard of objections to developers to this language, and it's part of our, at the time we were putting this forward, and it's consequently it's what we do. I don't know how many communities do this. Is it common?
I think most.
It's pretty common. So, and that was my only concern, and we just haven't seen many of them coming forward.
No.
With that, do I hear a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Move to approve consent
Second.
agenda.
Moved and seconded. Vote, please.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Mom?
Aye.
Mayor Neely?
Aye. With that, we'll go on into communications with the city manager first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As most of you know, Oregon City has an excellent working relationship with the Clackamas Fire District. Current Chief Ed Kirchhofer is retiring, and the district has appointed a new chief who's been with the district in a lower ranking capacity for some time, and his name is Fred Carlton, and I'll be meeting with him this week to make sure that we maintain that great working relationship that we have with the fire district. And I spoke to Ed a little bit in detail about this candidate and who's going to be the chief, and I have no doubt but what we'll be able to maintain that great relationship that we have with the fire district. And I am going to challenge them to see if they will, on our cleanup day, continue to bring the practical army of people that they brought last time out here on the slope with us. And I'm going to challenge the police department to show up in matching numbers. I don't know if that's possible, but we'll try.
Matching numbers?
He's a rebel.
It's a big part of it.
I don't know if we're going to be able to match the numbers, but...
No, but it was really nice of them to turn out, and so that's a changing of the guard there, and I'm looking forward to having that visit with the chief to be this week. Also, Eric has been working very creatively on exploring options for the use of the depot building. I know that's one of the things that's in the Commission's current goals, and just wanted you to know we're working on that. He'll be bringing some of those ideas forward in the very near future.
Great.
It's sort of what we've been thinking about, and this, again, is a testament to his creativity. I think when you get new eyes on an opportunity,
Yes.
sometimes you see things that the rest of us didn't see. And I think what we're going to look at here is some sort of a combination that benefits the local economy and business as well as tourism, and ties back to the end of the trail.
Right.
And the train station as well, as far as a service area for people that are riding the train. So we'll be bringing those forward in the near future. And then there's a new proposed House bill in the legislature that would make it much easier for special service districts to form without property owners annexing into cities, which is, I guess that's the antithesis of encouraging, well, it is encouraging sprawl, in my opinion. And so our Community Development Director, Tony Conkle, has been talking to LOC about that, and I think Tony's going to go to Salem this week to testify about that. Yeah. So, do staff have anything? Anyone else? Okay.
Mayor and Commissioners, I wanted to mention, I was going to hand out a copy to each of you of the 4-day closure outreach plan. I wanted to make sure you guys have a copy of this so that you can be assured as to the magnitude of outreach we're taking on, to let people know about the 4-day closure of 213. And I also wanted to let you know that there is a public open house scheduled for next Wednesday at 5:30 here at the Pioneer Center to discuss. This was mostly sponsored by ODOT to talk about the Arch Bridge project and the McLaughlin Boulevard paving project. But we'll also be there with the booth to cover the jug handle and the 213 closure. So
what was that time again? What date?
5:30 next Wednesday, February 8th at the Pioneer Community Center.
Thank you, Nancy. We also have Nancy on as a guest speaker for our Rotary Club. She's going to make a presentation about the closure of 213. And then today in our quarterly managers meeting, I made the decision that, in concert with our department heads, that we're going to have our city buildings open on those 2 days, despite the circumstances. But to the extent it's possible and reasonable, we're going to have staff who don't have to be on site or who don't live in the city, for example. We're going to ask them to work from home that day to try to minimize the impacts from the street system here. So we will have very limited staffing in the building, but we'll be open. And that's really just for non-essential staff, because emergency providers like police, for example, and public works will have to be on site. We'll just encourage them to take the back way in and out of the city. So that's all we have.
Just one question from Ms. Crushauer. At one point, you're going to make a presentation on the resilience agreement?
Yes, that's at your next work session.
That's going to be at a work session.
Next Tuesday night.
So you may wish to hear about this if you want to come into the work session. Could you give just a very brief description so they can the public can figure out whether they want to come?
Yes. A group of jurisdictions throughout the Willamette Valley has been working to create a collaborative compact that would essentially organize us all to work together to prepare for many different kinds of emergencies or disasters. For example, massive flooding in the Willamette Valley. For example, potential impacts on agriculture from climate change. And it was started as more of a climate change preparation one, but then when we got working on it, we realized that there are so many other kinds of things that could happen in the Willamette Valley that we would all want to be collaborating on and be on the same page. So one person isn't doing one thing here, another person isn't doing something there. So we'll be discussing that at the work session next Tuesday night.
Okay, thank you. With that, first of all, I guess I was already told that I was supposed to announce the State of the Cities, and I think I already announced it, but that is on the 17th at 11:30, and it's going to be at the Abernathy Center. I'm working with staff on it. We're putting together a slide presentation, and I've asked certain things to be in it, but then we'll be meeting with staff to make sure everybody on staff has an input to it. And I'll try to get that out. The PowerPoint we'll be putting out, try to get that out to the commissioners. But I hope some people may have some restrictions, can't make it, but I hope we can have all the members of the commission there too. There is almost always a question session afterwards. No,
we will have it on our website, Mayor, after you're done.
We specifically scheduled it so you couldn't make it.
I know. But anyway. We wanted to make sure you were going to be in school, Rocky.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to mention, we had these items I mentioned that were prioritized last time, and only 9 cities at this point have responded. This is the Metro Advisory Committee, where we actually gave rankings in terms of the most important things that were before us. One was the greenhouse gas emissions came up in the top, and their state has put forward a goal for us to reach in terms of reductions by, I believe it's 2045 or 2050, and that was ranked one of the highest, as was affordable housing, which I also ranked very high. So that's something that the Metro Advisory Committee has put on for major discussions for advice that we would give to the Metro Council. With that, Anybody else have a report? Yes?
Not a report, but an additional information regarding the jug handle. It's amazing how huge this is.
It is.
I mean,
yeah, you've done a great job.
This is amazing. It's shocking how much impact one intersection has. The reason I wanted to mention this really quick is, and it's affecting a lot of things in the city, and the upcoming school board meeting, they are actually, the Friday of the closure is a school day still. The rest of the time frame is over spring break. So the school board is is proposing actually swapping another day off in May with that Friday as a school day. So people that are interested in giving their input to that, the hope is that we won't have school on that Friday, which means our already doubled spring break will be one extra day. So 2 weeks in a day. Be the longest spring break ever. But so anyway, if people want to give their input on that, that'll be. I think it's at the next school board meeting. But
if they're talking about taking a vacation during that period of time, tell them to go south and tell them not to come back until Tuesday morning.
Right.
Anyway, I wanted to make a couple of comments. This has been very well organized by the city. That Friday is also finals week for Clackamas Community College, but they don't have classes and finals on the Friday, and then the Monday starts their spring break as well. The county, of course, has a 4-day week, so Friday is off, and the greatest effort has been put forward by the city to get other agencies and entities to actually not be around during this period of time.
Yeah.
And I really want to compliment the staff on your activities here in that
Mayor,
regard.
we'd even like to encourage citizens to almost treat it like a storm event that's coming.
Yeah.
To go buy your provisions, get fresh water, get your medicines, anything like that you're going to need for that 4 days. And a stack of good movies or books or something, and just either leave town or plan on staying in.
Leave town south. Leave town south.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
I have a couple of comments.
Yes.
I wanted to first thank our staff for putting together a great commission retreat up at the Amesworth House. Yes. It really went well, I thought, and we got out early, so that was great. We had a great dinner at the chamber. And Rocky was even in the front page with the rest of the school group.
With all the girls.
With all the girls. The mayor gave an award. Do you want to share the award that you gave?
Yes. Remind me again.
Citizen of the Year.
Oh yes, Citizen of the Year. Yeah, that was my. Well, they're always my selection, but the Citizen of the Year was not a citizen. It was actually an entity, I guess I would say. Yeah. The awards were given to the prior Oregon City, the Oregon City School District Superintendent, the high school principal, and to the staff and faculty of Oregon City High School. They had merited in so many ways. They've been rated by the Oregon Department of Education, I believe that's right, as a outstanding high school last 3 years, including a year that actually you've had furlough days, and so you've had reduced classes. Mm-hmm. They've, in terms of performance rates, they've gone up tremendously. The average student has, I think, an excess, I don't have my notes in front of me, an excess of 20 AP credit hours. AP classes are ones that carry college credits. There's been this tremendous transition in the Oregon City High School. And And I felt that that, above anything else that I could think of at the time, merited the recognition. We call it Citizen of the Year, but this has really been a citizen of more than a half a decade of planning and goal setting that enabled this to come to fruition. And they did a tremendous job. And so it's more than a citizen. It, in fact, is the Oregon City High School and the school district to make this possible. So, and we had some members there of the school district that were there in addition to, I should mention their names. Roger Rader, Dr. Roger Rader was the superintendent who retired last year, and then currently Nancy Bush Lang is the high school president, and she was hired, I think, 1 year after the superintendent came on, and I'm sure they look at her from the standpoint of being able to meet those goals. And I was really, really honored to have them there and to be able to make that presentation.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Very good. And with that, the meeting is adjourned.